I have this really annoying lack of self-belief in things that I do. Yeah. And I remember saying, I don't know if I can do this. And I did all this thinking, and you don't need to answer it on your own. It's about working as a team, and it's about a group of smart people getting in a room together and trying to figure out and solve problems. And that I thought was really refreshing. And it's being comfortable about saying no to certain things as well. Yeah. And also learning from failure. You have to be able to accept, okay, that one didn't work, then move on to the next.
In today's episode, we speak to Lisa Scott, who has over 20 years in financial services and most recently as the European CEO for Bank. Lisa's had a fascinating and impressive journey, which includes some unexpected twists and turns, which we cover in detail.
British Airways and work for Air Miles, and then go and work for Lloyds, and then you go to PayPal. What happened?
At that point,
Thank you for being here. It's amazing. I was just saying I love having people who I want young people to see as a role model, which I genuinely believe you are, and I really want to get to know your story because I don't actually know your story.
That's true. Yeah.
I know a little bit about what you've done and your accolades and all this other stuff, but I don't know your story. So I love doing this. We take it right back to the start.
Okay.
So where was school? What did you love about school? What did you hate about school? On the spot.
Oh, I loved school.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I went to a grammar school in Essex. So my headmaster of my junior school, bless him, Mr. Dixon, I still remember his name, he suggested I sit the 11 plus, and I was out of catchment area, long way away from any of the grammar schools, and my local comprehensive didn't have the best track record. So sat the 11 plus, I got in, which was awesome. I used to do a 45-minute to an hour bus ride each way every day to get to school, apart from the days when my dad got in from shift work at 7 a.m. and bless him, would drive me up to school. So I loved it. I was at a girls' school. I did, I wasn't particularly sporty. I was definitely more academic, but there was it was a good gang of people. It was a great environment at the school, and I loved going.
Did you, when you're doing that commute, because that's a commute, right? I don't know if you call it a commute for kids, but I'm going to call it a commute. Yeah. Did you ever have times when you were like, I'm not interested in this, can't be bothered?
Oh, I mean, literally every morning leaving the house. So I'd have to leave the house about 7:30 in the morning to go up the road to make sure I didn't miss my bus. Yeah. And there are occasions where I missed the bus, and then there was the panic for getting to school. There were the occasions, when it snowed and the bus just stopped. Yeah. And I'm stranded and got to go figure out a way to get back home or get to school. So the mornings was definitely the hardest, getting on that bus and getting to school. And there were no other kids going to that school from where I came from, so I was on my own on the bus.
So was it your parents did they encourage, were they like, get up, get going, or have you always had the get up, get going?
No, I'm not a mornings person. I can safely say I am not a mornings person. You give me a 6 a.m. meeting or an 11 p.m. meeting, I would go for the 11 p.m. meeting. Really? Every day of the week, yeah.
Do you reckon that's ever pulled you, as you've gone through roles, do you reckon that's ever pulled you towards doing US stuff rather than Asian stuff from the UK?
Probably. So I did, when I was at PayPal, I used to do Asia and US. Yeah. And the 6 a.m, so I did a few 6 a.m. calls, conferences, and they were a killer. But a midnight, I could do a midnight.
Isn't that fascinating? The habits that have been with you from school have stayed with you. Yeah. Did you have any idea as you were going through school what life after school might look like?
No. I do remember, everything stems back to my careers advisor. So I think it must have been when we were choosing A-levels, perhaps, or maybe it was when we were in first year of A-levels. You have this whole big questionnaire you fill out, and do you like working in an office? Do you like being outdoors? And you came through all of this stuff, and I really didn't have a clue. I knew I liked numbers, and I knew I liked maths for some strange reason, and I also had this thing I had this thing about, gosh, it doesn't sound very exciting sitting at a desk all day.
You're right.
So when I filled out my form and it all got churned into the computer, it came out as the recommended job for me was a quantity surveyor.
Did you know what it was when it came out?
No, I didn't have a clue.
I don't think I know what it is now. What is a quantity surveyor?
It's basically the finance person on a building site.
That is the best way of describing what a quantity... The finance person on a bit. All right, so then you hear building site, and what do you think?
So I did a vocational degree. So I did building engineering as my degree. I did all of the sort of rounds at the unis, and at Manchester they had a building engineering degree, but you had to be sponsored.
Okay.
So I also had to find a sponsor.
What do you mean by
construction
sponsor?
company. Because it was a sandwich degree, the third year you worked in industry and then you went back for your final year. And then as a commitment, you worked for them for a year after you graduated as well. So they sponsored me, basically gave me beer money through university, which was definitely appealing. Yeah. So everybody on the course had to be sponsored by a firm.
How did you go about getting the sponsorship?
I think I wrote lots of letters. I think I just did loads.
I love it. I love that. Like, I need something, I'm going to go get it.
Yeah, I just had to do loads of outreach. Just like, I've got to find a sponsor.
Yeah.
And I think I ended up finding a construction company. A bit of an oddity anyway, because I was a female, if I'm honest.
Did you get any weird responses because you were female? Or was it just lack of response?
I think probably lack of response. So I think there were about 35, 40 of us on my degree course, and there were 4 women in that. And then we sort of became a bit of a novelty.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh my God, there's a woman.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I worked on building sites for a year when I was, I guess I must have been 20. A
20-year-old woman walking onto a building site saying, "I'm the trainee finance person on this building site." How was that?
Yeah,
as you'd expect.
Yeah, it was pretty horrific. I definitely developed a thick skin early. Okay. Definitely never told my dad some of the language and some of the things that were said on site. But to be honest, I was a bit of a I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily say feminist as such, but I was like, well, I don't see why.
Yeah, good for you.
I don't see why women can't do this, like if men can do the job. So I had this sort of indignant determination to just do it. Yeah. I mean, working on a building site is hard. Mice, rats, come in every morning. You don't want to be the first person on site because it's pretty grim.
Suddenly you're like, I wish I'd have put office in that thing.
Yeah. And you're like, okay. And it was, all the offices are in the basement. So when you're working on site in the winter, you could walk into the site office in the dark and leave in the dark and not see daylight. But it was a great learning experience. There were some really good people that I worked with on site. I got to do lots of extra stuff because, again, sort of maybe being a bit of a novelty, I got the opportunity to do a lot of stuff. I actually did this training course at Eton for 16, 17-year-old boys at Eton who might at some point in their lives go and work for a woman, and it was called Women in Industry. And it was kind of
recently?
No. This was as a 21-year-old.
Oh.
Going in and sort of having chats with them and
amazing.
And discussions about careers and where they were going. But ironically, I think one of the boys was a prince in the group that I had.
Of course he was.
Probably wasn't something that he was going to be encountering anytime soon. But it was great. I mean, it was a good learning experience.
So now you're not the finance person on a building site.
So
what happened?
I think a year in after graduation, I kind of got to the point where I said, I've proved my point.
Yeah.
I can do it, but it's not the best working environment. Your jobs change on a regular basis. So depending on the contract you're on, depending on new build refurbs, they'll take different amounts of time. So you're constantly in a new cycle every few months. And at that point, I decided I was going to go a bit more mainstream finance. Okay. So...
Oh, by the way, before you move on, are you handy?
Well, I did... so
please say yes.
And I'm really sorry for the family who might still be living in this house. We did a housing construction job in South London, and I said I really want to do some bricklaying. And so the guys, bless them, they let me go out on site for a day for bricklaying, and I can tell you now, bricklaying is really hard.
I've no doubt.
And it's a skill. And when I got to the end of the day, the difference between one end and the other, they had to put a lot of plaster at one end and very little at the other to smooth out the line. So I do apologise for the family that's living in that
we won't say what town
house.
that is.
And also, don't do bricklaying without any gloves on, because the lime in the cement burns holes in the ends of your fingers. So I had literally every single one of my fingers plastered up for about a week while they recovered.
Okay, so you moved on from building because you couldn't do it as well as. So what? Did you go to BA?
I did, yeah. I joined their finance graduate program.
So is this you again sending messages
very,
out trying to find something?
I think I applied for the Marks and Spencer's graduate program, the British Airways. There was a Sainsbury's one. There were quite a few. So
did having a experience in a big company, albeit a construction company, help? Do you think, rather than just being a pure grad?
Maybe. We definitely had a mix of us that joined. So there were, I think, 25 of us that joined the grad program in the year I joined, and there was a range. There was quite a few that came straight out of university. But there were a few that had different backgrounds as well. And I have to say, it was the most awesome graduate program ever. Some of my very best friends I met from BA.
Was it typical grad program where you move around different parts? You spend time in Heathrow. Did you do cabin crew?
I didn't do cabin crew. No, we did have to go to the airport to help out when there were strikes on and things like that. So I did a year in audit. I did a year in sales finance. I did a year in cargo. So worked out at World Cargo. Wow. And it was a great place to learn. Really good program that they had. Yeah. And then I became a finance manager at BA after that.
Love it.
And then
is that when you thought to yourself, I think I know what I want to do now? The building stuff's in the doldrums somewhere.
Yeah, but similar sort of processes. You know, it's analysis, it's forecasting, it's budgeting, it's understanding your numbers. Yeah. Trying to think of a 1-2 year plan, those sorts of things. So there was quite a lot of things that I could bring forward, but then it was just in a different environment. And obviously there was professional learning as well. So I qualified as an accountant as part of that training as well. And then, that was kind of focused in on the finance side.
Love it. So was it a promotion out of the grad scheme into that finance manager role, or did they say you're going to have a job at the end of this guaranteed, or was it just?
Well, you then apply for at the end of the graduate program you apply for roles.
So you know that's what's going to be the process.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So how long do you stay there, and then what's
after that? Well, then September the 11th happened, and obviously airline industry kind of imploded. Yeah. So at that point, I took a 6-month sabbatical and went travelling around the world with the man that is now my husband, who is also on the graduate programme.
That's why it was the best grad program. Come on.
So we just took 6 months out and went travelling for 6 months.
I really want to know about the actual day of September 11th, because you worked for an airline, and I've never spoken to anybody that worked for an airline on that day. Yeah. What happened?
I vividly remember all of us in our office crowding round TV screens, just watching as it was coming out on the news, and then like panics about what was happening in London. So my sister was working in Canary Wharf at the time, and then there was this whole, is there going to be something that's simultaneously they're trying to happen in London, and the whole just sort of disbelief, and then literally everything grounded. Immediately.
So how quickly after that do you realise that taking some time out is the right thing? Were you forced to do it, or was it just...
well, they offered it, so they didn't force anyone to do anything, and so they were offering people 6 months out with a guarantee of coming back to their job at the end of it.
There is some silver lining in that cloud, isn't there?
Yeah.
That's awful, but for you in that stage in your career,
absolutely. It's funny though, because I did have a boss at the time who said, don't do it, you're going to, it's the biggest mistake you're going to make in your career is by taking the time out.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know.
Is that because it's the keep everything on your CV, like stay in the job for a long time, institution type stuff? Yeah. Well, he was wrong.
And I didn't listen to him. And I took the time out. And, it was amazing because we literally went around the world and spent time in Africa and South America, drove across the US. We did like loads of stuff.
Unbelievable.
And then when I came back, I guess I came back with a slightly different perspective on stuff. And I remember going back into the office at Heathrow, and someone said, "Oh my God, did you come back early?" Like, no, I've been gone 6 months.
Really?
And just things don't necessarily move that quickly.
Yeah.
Especially, I guess, in like larger corporate organisations.
Isn't that
So
funny? That somebody
kind of-
just thought that it had gone like that, but actually you've been gone for 6
Yeah,
months.
yeah.
Shows that their time's just rolling. So,
Yeah.
so do you reckon that conversation was the thing that made you think, oh, actually, maybe I should find something else? Or combo with that and the travel, I suppose.
Oh, the travel was, oh my God, the travel. That's the one thing I have to say. When I eventually left, so after BA, I actually went to work at Air Miles, so the
Okay.
loyalty company that was subsidiary of
fine.
BA
Yeah.
down in Crawley, because I got a role to do a bit more expansive stuff like commercial planning and product development and
Yeah.
business development
Cool.
and those sorts of things. When I eventually left, I realised the whole the standby travel had left because
Yeah.
we did so much travel around
Yeah.
the world. It was awesome.
Have
Most
you,
amazing
have you,
experience.
have you tried to incorporate travel into your work
Doesn't
going forward?
It's not the
have a
same
go, can't you?
thing.
It's not, is it?
no.
Business travel is horrendous.
Business travel really is not glamorous. I could do like day trips to Europe.
Yeah.
You know, I'm on a 6:30 a.m. flight
Yeah, of
out to
course.
Berlin and I'm home at midnight. Like, there's not much
No.
fun in that.
No, there's not.
There's some awesome people there that you go
Yeah.
and meet, but
Yeah.
the travel itself is really hard.
So you've ended up at Air Miles with a new
Yeah,
partner
and it was
who ends up being your
actually-
husband. Happy
yeah,
days. Did
so,
he stay at BA?
No, he left.
Oh, you
no,
both left? You were both
he
like,
was
right,
all
we're off,
over
we're
the- No,
gone.
he'd left before. He actually
had he?
worked for ITV Digital and that imploded. So
Okay.
that actually, the timing was perfect with
Gotcha.
with me getting the opportunity. It was actually my finance graduate program lead who was then the MD of Air Miles.
Oh, fine.
When I got back, he's like, "Are you interested in doing something different?" And so I went to work for him at
So, question for
Air
you:
Miles.
you applied for the building. I'm just going to building
Yeah.
finance person. You apply for that scheme. You apply for the BA role, but
Yeah.
now you've built a reputation. So somebody's saying, "Can you come
So-
here?" Have you ever applied for a job again?
Never.
Yes. Love
I've
this.
never applied for a job since I applied for the BA graduate
So
program.
the last job you applied for was a graduate program.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And I have to say, this guy, unfortunately, he's no longer with us. This guy called Drew Thompson. He was the most awesome person that influenced my early career. He was the person. He was incredibly energetic. Like, he just energized an entire room.
Yeah.
He had plans and visions and next steps on everything, and he would put me into things that I would say, "Oh, God, I can't do that."
Yeah.
And "No, I'm not sure about that." He's like, you can do that.
Amazing.
And he just pushed me into so many things that ended up building my skills, building my confidence. The one thing that I really regret is I actually never told him that,
yeah.
which is a bit of a, but he was really influential for me for the first couple of moves I did, and I went to work for him subsequently later on as well.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Amazing. It's funny. There's always someone
Yeah.
early in your career.
Yeah.
It's nice to see you speak so fondly about that person. You know, because he's obviously had a massive impact on you.
Yeah. He was just a great guy and very visionary and just always thinking the new. So you thought like the next step might be here, and he'd
Yeah.
go, no, the next step's here, and would really kind of stretch
Amazing.
on things.
So when I think of finance and accounting, I don't think of people like that. I think of people who are cautious and are looking at, there's forward planning, but I'm thinking about people who are super organised and super diligent rather than people. I've never heard somebody who works in finance being described as a visionary. Maybe that's my bad that I haven't had my eyes open enough. Have you met people who are like that again in that specific area? Because to me that sounds really unique to have somebody in finance be a visionary.
Well, he by the time I worked for him at Air Miles, he was then the MD.
Oh,
So
great.
he'd
So
moved
just
out.
come through that way.
Yeah,
Fine.
he'd come through finance and then grew and picked up different roles.
Okay.
So, and then to be honest, after Air Miles, I moved out of finance. So since
Okay.
then, I've worked more with product,
Yeah.
marketing, other
Do you think-
areas.
Do you think you moved out of finance because he dragged you into
Probably
a bigger vision and seeing more?
I think so, yeah. So I started looking at like rethinking what the value prop could be for the company and how to reinvent the travel portfolio and then business development and trying to create new avenues for driving growth. So we did a partnership with the Times newspapers on driving awareness of the programme and little cutting out your coupons in
wow.
the paper and things. And I'd go and arrange, like negotiate on deals for that sort of stuff, which would never have been something that I would have put myself forward for.
I think it's a bit of a natural progression if you're ambitious in finance, because you aren't actually impacting the numbers. You can do cost reduction stuff, but ultimately you're looking at how can we grow this thing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what was the first role that was like non-core finance? Where's the spread your wings moment?
Oh, Lloyd's. So I went to work for Lloyd's Bank, Lloyd's TSB at the time.
Okay.
One of my bosses at Air Miles.
Okay.
So I went to work there.
So you followed that boss?
Yeah, he called me and said, "Are you interested?" I'm like, product development for credit cards. Don't know, but
yes,
I'll give it a go.
Love it.
And so I was at Lloyd's for quite some time. We did some amazing stuff on new product development.
Yeah.
This new credit card at the time that was a dual Amex and a MasterCard credit card.
Okay.
So it was one of basically you earn Air Miles. That was the connection. So obviously there was an Air Miles piece in there as well.
Yeah.
And you earned miles, and it was a spender type card.
Okay.
So I did the build of that and the launch, and then ran the portfolio and ran the credit cards piece, and then we merged with HBOS, which was a bit of a moment.
What year did that happen?
Oh my goodness, I can't remember. It must have been
2005,
I think it was slightly later because my daughter was born about 6 months after it happened, I think. So 2008, I think, is when
Good year as well.
I think that's when it happened. And that became a real challenge. That was the first time I'd really experienced where pretty much everyone had to reapply for their job. You remember that time where everything was just, the banks were really bad, and
that time.
the taxpayers paying for the banks. That was then.
Yeah, the media jumped.
That was that time. And I was like, I'm in retail banking. I'm not a corporate banker. Like, oh my God, there are people working in branches that are impacted by this. That, like, you know.
Did you find when that was happening that like people in your life that were outside of banking were looking a little bit more scornfully on
Oh, definitely.
what you did?
It was one of those moments where, and there's not many times it's happened, but it was one of those times where if you're at a dinner party, you're like,
that's what I mean.
Yeah, you're like, do I want to say I work for a bank? Because
you should be proud that you work for a bank.
Yeah, but everything was just so negative about it at the time.
Okay.
And then they had to kind of merge these two giant organisations, which was a challenge.
So you've got a 6-month-old child, all that carnage is going on. You're not particularly enjoying dinner parties anymore.
No,
What
and
next?
I was having to travel to Cardiff every week.
Glamorous.
Leaving.
The M4's lovely any time of year.
I was leaving like 5 o'clock in the morning to get to the office with a 6-month-old. And then we have office in Bristol, so I was having to commute to Bristol.
It's a bit less far though.
It was just slightly less, and that's fine. So I decided to just like go and do something different, and I went into consulting for a while.
Okay. But somebody approached you to do that?
Drew approached me about that, yeah.
Do you reckon he knew that you weren't enjoying what you were doing, or did he just think this person?
He just reached out to me and said, look, there's some stuff happening.
Cool.
And there was some potential things that were happening with sectors that I had experience in.
Okay.
So there were discussions happening with a number of like bank and credit companies that needed some consulting work. Okay. So in terms of my background and skill set, there was a match.
Had you engaged with consultants in the past?
Yeah, I mean, at Lloyd's, they were,
sure.
you know, in all the time.
Did that not put you off?
This was a really small consulting company.
Okay.
Yeah, they were a really, really nice bunch,
Amazing.
I have to say. A really small team, about 12, 15 people, very, just very welcoming, nice people. Yeah. So I did a few projects, and then I ended up, bizarrely, working in Rayners Lane for Ladbrokes, doing a consultancy project on how they needed to think about, rather than operating as a whole bunch of separate businesses, how they needed to merge their businesses and operate as one, with a one customer view rather than a product view. So I did some project work for them.
Amazing.
And then I got approached about joining PayPal.
So you've gone...
I'm all over the place.
Sorry, let me just work
Is there a
this
plan?
out.
Was there a plan? No.
Deep breath. 11 plus only person at the school, finance person on a building site grad scheme, British Airways, 9/11 happens. You do a sabbatical in your very early 20s. Epic, great time to do
Yeah.
it. You then come back and work for Air Miles, and then go and work for Lloyd's, but not in the nasty part. And you then go do consulting and work for Ladbrokes, building a single customer view for them, and then you go to PayPal.
Yes.
Epic.
Yeah.
That is topsy-turvy and joyous at every moment.
Yeah.
So how did you get offered the job at PayPal? What happened? Because you're consulting and you're enjoying it.
Yeah,
There's 15 people, which is smaller than all the bigger ones, which must have been lovely.
My boss from Lloyd's
Okay.
was at PayPal and approached me about joining.
Nice. So what was the role at the
Do you
start?
think I may be easily influenced?
Do you know what it is? Actually, I'm going to ask you the question. People's the thing that matters, right?
So I'm very much, when it comes down to it at the end of the day, there's only two things that matter to me in the job. And then the first and way up there as the number one is people. So I get my energy from other people, and the people I work with, the environment, how you engage is the most important thing for me. So having people that I know that I can work well with, that complement each other in terms of skill set, for me was that's the most important thing. And then the second most important thing, but it's a long way down, is can I get excited about the product?
Fine.
That you're working on. But for me, it's always people.
Yeah. I feel exactly the same. And we just hired somebody new recently, and I said to him, I know you want to work in sport, ex-athlete and whatever. I said, I didn't want to be doing what I'm doing either. Right, that's why this is called Not What I Expected. But you don't have to follow your passion, but you can let your passion follow you.
Yeah.
So if you said to me, this microphone's the best microphone in the world, I'm like, hell yeah, this is the best. You can get behind stuff. So I'm with you on that. And the people thing, it's number one. And I think people, if you aren't sure about the important people that are going to be around you when you join a company, just don't join, because I've never seen it work out.
I agree.
Ever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So it's nice people, good rapport. You get a gut feel, I think, for those sorts of things.
Okay, so it's happened again.
Yeah. So I was at PayPal for 11 years nearly, which was an awfully long time in comparison to other things. But again, some awesome people that I work with, got the opportunity to work with people across the globe.
Yeah.
And people, I think at one point I had people in my team from 12 different countries.
Wow.
From Australia right the way around to Mexico.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience. So I learned a lot, I have to say, in that environment.
So by the end of your time at PayPal, what was your title?
Senior Director of Product Marketing, Global Product Marketing.
Senior Director of Global Product Marketing. How many people in your org there?
I think I had about 35 at that point in different roles globally.
Yeah.
And I'd worked, the team had, at some point it had been into the CPO, at some point it was into the CMO, at other points it was into CEO.
Oh, wow.
One thing that I think, is the common thing that happens in very large organisations is the restructure every now and again to shake things up. So there was quite a lot of structure changes and lots of then different people I was working with.
Yeah. So so you're Senior Director of Product Marketing. What's the thing that you did at PayPal that everybody would know about? Is there one?
So actually was a couple of things. So pricing. So I did a lot of stuff on product development on pricing that hadn't been touched in 10 years.
So this is how much retailers pay to use PayPal?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and how the infrastructure worked and how the product worked and how you would then update prices and how you would manage that in the system.
Yeah.
And that was an awfully long project that had to get delivered, and then built credit for the UK for PayPal.
So for people like me who might not understand what that, so when you say built credit for PayPal, what does that mean in the most simple terms possible?
PayPal had bought a company in the US called Bill Me Later that then gave the credit proposition. So as part of a PayPal account, you could apply for a credit and then you would use that credit for shopping. Then the plan was to expand that into the UK, or into Europe. And I worked with the team on building that out for the UK. So I was the UK person on the team working with the US. And at the time, I think there'd been a bit of an assumption that you just kind of lift the product and put it in the UK, but credit doesn't work the same way
No, it does not.
in the UK as it does in the US. And so there was a hell of a lot to consider, and like the regulation and, you know, treating customers fairly and having to do all the diligence on customers. So it was the building the front end user experience, understanding customers, working with the teams in terms of risk profiles, and then getting the actual product infrastructure delivered with the teams. So I led that in the UK.
Do you find that, and this is a more general thing, but like, especially with the business you're in now, right, which like mine is pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing all the time. There's lots of little wins.
Yeah.
How do you find, from like a management perspective, you end up not asking people to do cement mixers every night? Because it used to be in years gone by that you went out and you had a drink to celebrate, but not everybody wants to do that. Like, how do you celebrate the little wins?
So we have at our office we have in London. There's like a monthly get together that we have. It's like pizza night. You know, there's a fridge full of drinks, alcoholic, non-alcoholic, doesn't matter, whatever takes your fancy. And it's more about the social gathering and connection. So we're a remote first company. Lots of people don't come into the office. I think, you know, a lot of the time if you're an engineer, do you need to come into the office? Maybe at a planning session every now and again, but other than that, no. Yeah. So it's about creating the opportunity, I guess, for some of those moments for people to just get together and hang out and share some of the success. And then we also have on our Slack channel, there's a shout outs channel.
Love that.
So even just little things like this person was awesome and they worked until 11 o'clock on a Friday night to get this done.
Did a bit of extra.
You just put it in the Slack channel.
Do you know what, those little social moments are a really interesting one. I take a lot of my like leadership style from sport, and if I think about the most rewarding feedback I've ever got is sat in the changing rooms after a game. So a game has just happened, and you know, you sit down in the changing rooms, you start to take your boots off and that sort of stuff, and someone goes, "Oh yeah, I see what you did. That was class. That was better than the press that came out after about the game. You know, the match reports, and that sort of stuff." It was actually just those little people. So I'm really interested that you say that, because that's, I think, the right way, just giving people a forum to share these things.
And not just waiting for and here's a 6 monthly review.
Oh no, because no one even reads them.
It's just, you know, like it has to be. There needs to be, I guess, a level of spontaneity and just positive feedback. But it's one of those things that you can kind of get carried away and forget because you're like, done, on to the next thing.
That's what I mean about these high growth companies. It's really hard.
Yeah.
Because it's
and
always
you can
good.
just keep thinking, right, done, next thing, done, next thing. And then it's about taking a beat and going, right, okay, is there something that you need to say, thanks, give a shout out, do something to recognise the efforts that people have put in?
Because that's what it is, isn't it? It's
I think so, yeah. Everyone likes a bit of
Of course they do, no matter what they say. And I'm, as you know, I'm a proponent of like celebrate people. When people do good stuff, tell them they're amazing. It's a British thing.
Yeah.
So when I moved to San Francisco and worked for a company there, everyone was hooting and hollering the whole time. And I was like, you must have seen that at PayPal.
Yes, it's funny because definitely as a Brit going into some of our sessions that we had in San Francisco at PayPal, I'd be like, oh my goodness.
Why is everyone clapping all the time?
Yeah, and whooping on everything. Yeah. And everyone was super excited.
Yeah, like Jenny's passed her probation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you're like, what?
And I was like, gosh, for me to be super excited, what is that? And it's so British, but we do tend to be a little bit more reserved.
We do.
Yeah. So one of my words that I use a lot now and everyone jokes about is I use awesome a lot.
Good.
I definitely picked that up from spending lots of time with San Francisco. But that's like just something that I keep also remembering. That was awesome. Thank you for that. That was really good.
Yeah, nicely done. So one of the things that's hardest about leaving a big company when you've been there coming on for a decade is that you're sort of tied into the continual future success of that company.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We don't need to dig into that too much
No, let's not.
So what was it that made you leave?
This headhunter called me for a role at Banked, and I was like, I'm not looking. And she's very persuasive. And she said, just meet them. Just have a chat with them. And then I met Brad.
Yeah.
And
Brad's the founder, right?
Yes. And he is another of those highly energizing, charismatic people who can pretty much convince you of anything. And
that's his job.
Yeah.
Convince investors, convince team, convince everything.
Yeah. And I I have this really annoying, lack of self-belief in things that I do.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to him and saying, I don't know if I can do this, and we'll need to figure this out and understand how customers will use this as the payment button. And I did all this thinking, and he said, you don't need to answer it on your own. It's about working as a team, and it's about a group of just smart people getting in a room together and trying to figure out and solve problems.
Nice.
And that I thought was really refreshing.
Yeah.
Rather than, the typical must do this, deliverable. And he's like, just join and just let's go figure it out together and see what we can do. And that was pretty much why I did it, if I'm honest. It's all down to him.
I love it, but that's good, and it has to be. Your first 100 or so hires you have to do that.
Yeah.
So what does Banked do?
So Banked is a global real-time account-to-account payments infrastructure. So if you think about, I'm shopping online and I pay by bank, and then
that's connect your bank account to the checkout.
So so what you do, you select pay by bank.
Yeah.
And then there'd be a connection that you are a secure connection that's given between you and your bank. So I'd say, right, I've got a Monzo account. I select Monzo in the checkout. What it then does is does a secure deep link into my Monzo account. I authorize the transaction and I'm done. So I would basically be checking out with my Monzo biometric authorization.
Amazing.
So there's no account, there's no card numbers, there's no setup of anything you need to do. It's just a link through, which obviously in the UK was enabled through open banking. Yeah. And then there are different guises of it in all the markets. And so we build out the proposition across multiple markets, Europe, Asia, and in the US.
Yeah. What's been the best thing? What's been the worst thing?
What's been the best thing? Do you know what the best thing was? This was just a little thing. So when I joined, I was CMO, and
Oh, that's what you got. Oh, okay.
And I was reassessing what the value proposition was, because they hadn't really looked at what the website did. They kind of positioned it a bit more as P2P originally, and it wasn't doing that. It was selling to enterprises and merchants. So I was doing this complete rethink on the value proposition, and I was doing, what everyone says, eat your own dog food, try out the product and do testing. And I found a whole bunch of stuff. It's like, we could probably improve the checkout by doing this, and we could do that, and it would be ideal if we could change things. And so I did a bit of a review.
Yep.
And I gave it to the engineering team. And obviously, if I'd given that to an engineering team in a large corporate, 6 months later, we'd still be figuring out what you put on your roadmap.
Of course.
And a week later, the guy came back and went, that's done. What's next? I nearly fell off my chair. I was like, oh, my goodness. Wow. And so the pace and the ability to be responsive and nimble was just the real eye-opener for me, because I'd always, until this point, it's always been large organisations, corporates.
Yeah, it's a whole different world.
And it's a completely different world. So that for me was like, wow, this really is the way that it makes a real difference. Yeah. I think that the toughest thing, is just the constant pressure on numbers and getting velocity.
Yeah, of course.
Because obviously you're being funded, people need to see results, you're then constantly on the next round, this. Yeah.
Somebody explained it to me at the start of this journey as it feels like being told to sprint at 100% effort but not being told how long for.
Yeah.
Now I know exactly what that feels like, because my legs are ruined and I'm just like, when is it? But that's the game, right?
Yeah.
There's upside to it, and it's, that's the game.
Yeah.
But that must be a hard thing from, like, there's the joy of the speed of execution and everything else that you didn't get at PayPal, but then there's also this other side of, like, we as this small group have ultimate responsibility for hitting numbers, and we don't know when it's going to stop.
Absolutely. And it's just, so when you were talking about celebrating the small wins, because you have to, because as soon as that one's done, there are more.
Oh, yeah.
And there is no pause to reflect or pat yourself on the back or go away and spend 2 months thinking, building out the next business case for something. It's like next. Yeah. And that's hard. Yeah. Then you just have to have the ability to know how to, I guess, prioritize and then be able to decompress from
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
Because
Put it in a box, never think about it.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll never, no one will ever get everything done on their to-do list. It's impossible.
No.
And so it's about what's going to make the biggest difference, and then being really clear on the actions and the outcomes that are most important.
Yeah.
Like now, in the next month, the next 3 months, to then know what to prioritise.
Yeah, and that's what being a strong leader is, right? Because there's people that won't be able to deal with it.
And it's being comfortable about saying no to certain things as well.
Yeah.
And also learning from failure. Because the other thing, I guess, in my mid-20s, I want to say, up until my mid-20s, probably up until quite recently, really not good at failure.
Fine. Oh no, you've got to just be like,
but you have to
get this wrong, let's have a go.
But you have to be able to accept, okay, that one didn't work, then move on to the next.
Yeah. The only other thing I have to ask you is some predictions for the industry in the world of payments. So you think about I say to the team all the time, could you explain this to my nan?
No,
right?
You could never explain payments to your nan.
All right.
Like, payments is the most complicated.
It is horrendous.
It's the most complicated thing. Even trying to understand what's a PSP, what's a gateway, what's an orchestration layer, how many people removed are you from a customer making a payment to the person that you're paying. It is the most intensely complicated infrastructure ever.
I'll do it a different way. From a consumer behaviour and the way we pay and how we pay.
Yeah.
What do you reckon? 5 years' time, how does the way we pay look different to today?
See, I'd love to say that cash is gone, but I don't think it will be.
Okay.
So, apparently cash usage has now started to go back up post-COVID.
Really? Why do you think that is?
I think it's just the easiest way you manage your money.
Yeah, you
if
know
it's
what you've
in your
got.
pocket, you can spend it, and when there's nothing left in your pocket, you can't spend it.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
So that's why things like I've been hearing some events and forums that I've been joining. Some people have stopped direct debits.
Yeah.
And they want to take back control and managing of when they make payments.
Oh, wow.
For things. So I don't carry cash. I don't even carry my card most of the time. Everything I do is my phone. Do I have any idea what that looks like at any point in time? No.
Yeah.
How easy is it to track? It's not.
Okay.
So I'd love to say, there'd be no cash left and everything's going to be done on your phone. I'm just not sure.
Yeah. I think about two things, control and convenience.
Yeah.
Seems like your focus in terms of your prediction is about the control element.
I think the thing is, so I had the fortune to do lots and lots of depth interviews with customers when I was at PayPal.
Yeah.
I've got hundreds of hours of depth interviews with customers across a number of different countries. Everyone says they should manage their money better. Of course, I feel like that's the answer I should give. Yeah. When they get the apps that help them manage their money and segment their spending into different places, do people actually then use it?
It's like New Year's resolutions.
It's like New Year's resolutions, yeah. So what's the easiest form of managing that? So I definitely think there are opportunities with digital payments, with wallets, with certain things that you can manage that better. It's all about creating something really simple for a customer to use.
100%.
If any level of complication and I've got to read the instructions 3 times, done.
Yeah.
It's gone.
I don't read them once.
I'm the person that puts up the bookcase without reading the instructions and then find out that there's a bit missing or it's a bit wobbly at the end. I don't have the patience, whereas my daughter, she does all the flat pack in the house now.
That's why you're a pioneer. I've loved listening to your journey. Thank you so much.
And that concludes another episode of Not What I Expected. I hope you loved that as much as I loved recording it. If you like it, let us know. If you don't, tell us how you think it could be better. Thanks and see you again.